What is up? Welcome. Let's make sure we got everything going. I've already notified the Discord. I already got my starting soon up here. Now I just need to pull up the comments. We're on the ball today, chat. We're right on track. So, today, guys, we're going to be talking about becoming aware of the mental stories, part 2. Become aware of the mental stories, part 2. Now, you might be wondering, why, Wonder Bro? Why are we doing a part 2 to a stream? I've never really seen that before. I'll tell you why we're going to do a part 2 to the Become Aware of Mental Stories stream. The reason we are doing a part 2 is because it is so crucial that you understand that those mental stories, aka all of that second fear, which seems automatic, right? And sometimes it can actually feel automatic because that habit of second fear is so strong that you add to these thoughts, okay? It is so important that you understand that when you get up in your head and you add to these thoughts, right? You add to these mental horror stories, right? These intrusive negative thoughts come in. We call that a story of the mind. Whether those negative intrusive thoughts be about your feelings, your life, whatever. We call that a story of the mind. It is so important to understand why it's just so crucial that you become aware of when these mental stories, aka these negative intrusive thoughts, pop up. You become aware of when that happens, and instead of jumping up there and getting involved with the mental story and adding to the mental story, which is keeping you in this hamster wheel of stress, right? It is so important that you realize that this is keeping you from healing. This is keeping you from being where you want to be. This is all that extra stress that you are adding, right? So becoming aware of the mental stories and then practicing not getting up there and adding this second fear, aka getting involved with the mental stories, fighting with the mental stories, arguing with the mental stories, right? Understanding why this is so crucial is huge. It's huge, and that's exactly why we're doing a part 2 today. Mike, what is up, dude? Sanchez, welcome, man. How you doing? What's up, Sebs? What's up, man? How you doing? Carrie, welcome. I'm back. Hey there, so excited. Been thinking on this all day. Welcome back. What's up, Craig? Welcome, everybody. Who got first today? Who got first today? Was it Mike? I think it was Mike. Mike got first today. Nice. All right, guys. Let's see. I'm gonna drop the link to the Discord as I always try to do before we get started. Let's see, for anybody who wants to join us over there on the Discord, it is completely free to do so. Maddie, what's up, Maddie? By the way, guys, we did have our little community chat yesterday in celebration of our 10-day streak. I want to do that little community chat over on the Discord every 10-day streak that we get. Of course, I don't want to make any promises, but I do want to try to do that every single time we hit a 10-day streak. There was a handful of people that joined us yesterday for that little community hangout. Time zones are a little weird, so a lot of people were kind of disappointed that they missed out on that. So maybe next time we'll try to do it at a different time just to give everybody a chance to get in there, right? But we did do that yesterday in celebration of our 10-day streak, and it was really awesome getting to talk to some of you guys. Justin, what's up, dude? Welcome. Welcome, Justin. Hope you're having a good day, man. Welcome. So, a lot of people enjoyed the way that I put that yesterday when we talked about mental stories, right? When we talked about how these intrusive negative thoughts pop up, which we call them stories, or we've been calling them stories here the past few streams. These stories pop up, and then you have a choice whether to add to that story or not add to that story, whether to be aware of that story or to indulge in that story and add to it and fight that story and argue with that story and write more, right? And take the pen and write more on that story. So it's really a choice at the end of the day, and that's the bad habit we need to break. Adding all this second fear to the thoughts and the feelings. The thoughts, like I said, we've been calling the thoughts a mental story here recently. I think it kind of helps people put it into perspective, but that is what we're going to be talking about again today. I'm like snotty over here. Maybe it's allergies. I'm not sure. A little bit snotty today. All right. We've already got a handful of people in chat. Let's go ahead and get started on this stream. Boom. Make that disappear out of the way. Let's go. So, like I said, we're doing a part 2 to becoming aware of the mental story stream because it's just so crucial. So let's put it in terms that are simple to understand. So what are we referring to, right? And we're just going to go ahead and get started with the stream. What are we referring to when we say mental story? When we say mental story, we are referring to those negative intrusive thoughts that pop up. Okay, that's a mental story. But the problem, okay, that's not the problem. The problem is when you add to the mental story. So yesterday we said it's kind of like your mind is handing you a pin. Anytime you get a negative intrusive thought, it's like your mind is handing you a pin. So let's say, Justin in the chat, for example, says that he's a little anxious at the store. So let's say Justin's mind hands him a pin. Whether these be thoughts that he's kind of practiced in the past and entertained in the past, or whether they're brand new negative intrusive thoughts, whatever the case may be, Justin's mind hands him a pin. And how does it do that? It does that by saying something like, I don't know, maybe something like, oh, here you are anxious in the store, blah blah blah, and it goes on, and it says something intrusive, it says something negative, it says something negative aimed at his thoughts, at his feelings right in this moment while he's a little anxious in the store. So his mind hands him a pin with these negative intrusive thoughts. Now it's up to Justin, right? It's up to Justin, and it's up to each and every one of you. You've got to take responsibility. It's up to you whether you want to take that pin and sit down and add to that story. So the thought comes in, right? And I'm going to give just another random example. A thought that I really struggled with back in the day when I had these anxious feelings was, oh, you're going to go crazy. You're not going to be able to handle these feelings. You're going to lose your mind, right? So the thought comes in, oh, you're going to lose your mind. You're going to go crazy. You can't handle these feelings. Here comes the thought. Okay, and of course I'm feeling anxious too, right? Of course I'm feeling anxious too. Now here comes the thought, you're going to go crazy, you're going to lose your mind. Your mind hands you that pin. And it's up to you in that moment. Do you become aware? There's that thought. There's that story. Not going to add to it. Thanks for coming. Not going to add to it, right? And just stay as the awareness, right? Now that doesn't mean those thoughts are doesn't mean the mind is immediately going to take back the pin. But it's up to you. In that moment, do I take the pen and do I write down, or do I sit down and I start writing and adding to that story? Oh yeah, you're right, I might go crazy. What if I can't handle these feelings? What if they're too strong? Blah blah blah. See, I'm adding to the story, and this is what we want to avoid. Now we don't use the word avoid very often here on the channel, but this is something we do want to avoid. We want to avoid taking that pen and sitting down and adding to that story, right? Because if we add to that story, now we're just fueling these thoughts up. Now we're just gassing these thoughts up. Now we're just scaring the crap out of ourselves with second fear, right? Because we're adding to the stories. We are contributing to the stories. Instead of being aware of the stories and just accepting these thoughts and feelings and avoiding getting involved by grabbing the pen and sitting down and contributing to the story, right? Instead of doing all of that, we're taking a step back. We're becoming aware of the stories as they come in. We're aware of the feelings. Obviously, we can feel them, but we're refusing to take the pen and sit down and contribute to the story. Okay, so again, let's give another example. What does it look like to contribute to the story? AKA, what does it look like to add second fear? Because essentially that's what we're talking about here. What that looks like is, let's say I get really anxious, and then I get these thoughts. Well, it's to get rid of this anxiety feeling. I got to do this thing, or something bad's gonna happen, right? I gotta perform this compulsion. Something bad's gonna happen. Now, in that moment, again, my mind is offering me a pen, like what you write with, right? Now, in that moment, I have a choice. I could say, okay, there's those feelings, there's those thoughts. I accept them. I'm not going to contribute. I'm aware that my mind is offering me a pen and trying to get me to sit down and contribute to this story, aka add second fear. I'm aware that the story is there, and just because I'm aware of it doesn't mean it might, disappear immediately. It might not, right? But I'm aware of it, and I'm not going to take that pen. It's very tempting. Okay, this is very important. We've pointed out this many, many times in the past. It's very tempting to want to take that pen and sit down and contribute to the story. But the moment you do that, you start adding all that nasty fear. So again, another example. We love examples here. Let's say I have health anxiety and I'm feeling extra anxious today, and I get the thought, well, maybe today is the day that my heart's going to explode. I just went to the doctor and got cleared yesterday, but maybe today is the day that my heart's going to explode. So there's that same old story. The mind is offering you a pen, In that moment, you have two choices. You take the pen, you sit down, and you contribute to the story, aka start adding second fear by saying things like, oh gosh, I really hope it doesn't explode today. What if it does explode today? It's possible that it could explode today. I wonder how many people have their heart just randomly explode. Maybe I should get on Google and start looking up statistics for the people out there that just have their heart randomly explode. Oh, maybe it won't explode though. Maybe I'm good. Maybe it won't explode. Hopefully it doesn't explode. I don't want it to explode. I'm young. If it explodes, ooh, that's going to be horrible. What would my family say if my heart just randomly exploded? Oh gosh, I don't know what they would say. They would be devastated. And then if my heart exploded and I wasn't here to take care of my family, then my family would be homeless. And if they're homeless, then it's my fault because my heart exploded. Maybe I shouldn't have ate all those coffee cakes back in the day, right? So blah 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 blah. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. You're taking the pen, right? You're taking the pen. Your mind just came in with this little thought. Okay, what if your heart explodes? And then you took the pen and you sat down and you wrote the most god-awful novel that I've ever read in my life, right? And we call this second fear. We call this second fear. You're getting involved. You're getting involved. You are accepting the pen that your mind is handing you, and you're contributing to the story. You're adding all this nasty second fear. Now, that's one way you can go. But that way, if you go that way, your nerves take an absolute beating, and that's why you're all here now. So you can go that way, or the mind offers you the pen. Oh, your heart might explode. And you say, okay, well, I'm aware of the story. There's that story. You point it out. You can point it out. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, there's that story. Okay, I accept these feelings. I accept these thoughts. I'm not going to contribute to that story. It's very tempting because out of habit, I've done it for so long. I want to sit down and I want to take that pen and I want to contribute to this story, aka add second fear. It's very tempting because I've done it for so long, right? It's very tempting. I can almost feel this pull to want to sit down and contribute to this story, but I see how far that's gotten me, right? So let's keep it short, sweet, and simple. What's another way to look at that? The mind offers you that pen. Okay, your heart might explode today. That's just a very generic example, by the way, guys. I know there's a million different thoughts out there, but that's just a very generic example. Okay, so the mind offers you that pen and you say, okay, it's very tempting to want to contribute to that story, but I'm staying as the accepting awareness of that story. There's the story, and I'm not going to sit down and contribute to the story. Because if I sit down and contribute to the story, I'm adding what we call nasty second fear. I'm keeping myself in this stressed out hamster wheel. Now, here's some things to expect. When you first start out, and you first start out just becoming aware of the story, calling it out, there's the story. And you're refusing to take the pen and sit down and contribute. Instead, you're just accepting. Okay, now when you first start out, that might not be the easiest thing in the world to do. Like I said, it's very, very tempting because it's such a strong habit. It's very, very tempting to accept that offer of that pen and sit down and contribute to the story with all this second fear, right? So one thing to be aware of is that it's going to be very, very tempting. Another thing to be aware of is that as soon as you start practicing not contributing to the story, these thoughts, right? And you just say, okay, there's that story. I'm not going to contribute. I accept it. Thank you for coming, right? Another thing to be aware of is that these thoughts might not disappear right away once you start doing that. This might take some rinse and repeating. This might take some habit building, right? But we're not basing recovery off the way that we feel. We're basing recovery off of whether or not we're putting in the work. So just because I say to myself, okay, well, there's that story again about how this bad thing might happen, but I'm not going to contribute to that. I accept these thoughts and feelings, and I get on with my day, right? I go back to living my life. Just because I do that once doesn't mean the gates open and everything is just sunshine and rainbows. These thoughts might stick around. These feelings might stick around, right? These things do not tend, okay, to just go away overnight. They do not tend to just go away the first time that you say to yourself, okay, I'm not going to contribute to the story, right? So we used to, I say we used to, it only happened like a month or so ago. We did a stream on a fire analogy, which I love. Okay, and the reason we did that stream on that fire analogy is because just because you start practicing acceptance and you're no longer adding wood to this fire, you're no longer adding fuel to this fire, doesn't mean that fire is going to burn up right away. How many of you here in chat have ever been around like a campfire, for example, or any sort of fire, right? Just because you're no longer adding fuel to it, whatever that fuel is, does that mean the fire just goes poof all of a sudden and just goes out? No, that's not how that works. It takes a while for that fire to burn down. Even though you've stopped adding fuel to it, Okay, it can still take some time for that fire to completely burn down and slowly get down to coals, right? So, a few things to expect when you start this accepting journey and you're no longer contributing to these stories in the mind, you're no longer adding to them, right? A few things to expect. It's not going to burn out immediately for most people, right? Now, that doesn't mean you go right back to adding to the story, right? That doesn't mean you go right back to adding to the story. And another thing to expect, it's going to be very tempting to add to this story. These stories have been around for a long time and you fought with them for a long time. Don't you think they're a bit like concrete by now? Don't you think this habit is a bit like concrete by now? Of course. But we need you to stay at the awareness. Okay, here's these feelings, right? Here's these old stories again. I can contribute or I cannot contribute, and just let it be as it is, right? So this is what we need to practice. Now, again, the reason I made a part 2 to this stream, guys, because it's just so important. It's just so crucial. It's just so fundamental. I know how tempting it is to add to these stories, aka these thoughts. I know how tempting it is to sit down and get involved with these stories, aka add second fear. I know how tempting all of this is. And that's why, I felt the desire, I felt the urge to make a part 2 to this stream. Because again, I know how tempting it is, but I also know how crucial it is that you stop adding to these stories, that you stop adding this second fear. All right? I know how crucial it is. This is what it all comes down to. So I hope somebody takes something from this stream. I hope we were able to elaborate on yesterday and kind of clear up any misconceptions that might be out there. But that is the point of today's stream, guys. That is the point of today's stream. Stop adding to the stories. I love you guys. We're going to switch on over to the post stream. How is everybody doing today? Let me know. Let me know how you're doing. What's up, Max? What's up, Giant? Welcome, guys. So I thought, like, I hate these feelings isn't already adding second fear, non-acceptance. If you've practiced that thought for so long, it can seem automatic, and that's okay, but let's stop the story there. Once we become aware of the thought, whether it was automatic or seemed automatic, or it's a thought that we've practiced a lot in the past, aka got involved in a lot in the past, whatever the case may be, once we become aware in the moment that there's a story going on, we're going to stop contributing. We might already be contributing, but now that we're aware, we can stop contributing, right? So there you go. So you might already be contributing, right? But either way, it doesn't matter whether you're already contributing or you're not contributing yet, and it's just a negative intrusive thought, or maybe you had a negative intrusive thought 15 minutes ago and now you've been writing this contributing story the whole time. Doesn't matter. The moment that you become aware, you stop contributing. The moment you become aware, right? The moment you become aware, and you can call it out. There's that story. There's that story, right? So either way it goes there. Once you become aware, you can start to put in that work. What's up, Mickey? You have literally changed my life. Following your advice has changed my life in ways I never imagined. I am so blessed, so grateful. That is awesome, soul. I'm so happy for you, dude. Keep it up. Keep it up. I'd love to hear it. Well, see, that's the thing. There's nothing wrong. You say, I got sucked in and feel the fear, the anxious feeling, and the dizziness got me a couple times. So, you're saying basically that, the anxious feeling and the dizziness got you involved in the second fear story, right? So it kind of sucked you in, and it was very tempting, and you gave in to the temptation, and you started adding second fear to it. You started contributing to the story, right? So that's fine. Nobody's perfect. I know you're fairly new here. I tell my people all the time here on the chat, hey, nobody's perfect, right? I say it all the time. Nobody's perfect. But at least you caught the story eventually. You caught the story, right? Oh, you got to accept feeling scared, Sam, right? So a lot of people say, well, if I'm using acceptance, then I shouldn't be scared. No, that's not true. You're going to be scared. You're going to be shaking. You might even be terrified from time to time, but you're still not adding second fear, which means you're still not getting involved in any sort of mental stories, blah, 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 don't want to feel this, don't want to feel that. And if you do catch yourself getting involved in mental stories, you can come back and you can say, okay, no more involvement in these mental stories. And then maybe 5 seconds later, you get the thought again. You've practiced it for so long, right? It's such a bad habit. You get the thought again, oh, your heart might explode, or maybe you get the thought again, I don't want to feel this. Oh, you catch that story, right? I'm no longer going to contribute to the same old broken record. There's that story. It can be there if it wants. These feelings and thoughts, they can be there if they want, but I'm no longer contributing. Everyone see what I'm saying there? I'm no longer contributing to it. I'm just becoming aware of it, right? Even if I have been contributing for the past 10 minutes to this mental horror story, I'm going to catch it. I'm going to catch it and I'm going to stop contributing. You see what I'm saying? And I'm just going to be aware. I'm just going to be aware. There's that story. I'm going to live my life. There's that story. I'm going to live my life. Right? And that, you still might be scared, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You can't necessarily control that. You still might be scared. You still might have these tempting thoughts. You still might even be contributing to the story, but you're practicing not doing that, right? Right? Caught it before it went too far. Yeah, there you go. See, you contributed to the story for a little bit, which basically just means you added second fear for a bit, but you caught it before it went too far. You stopped adding that second fear. You just became aware. Oh, there's that story trying to pull me back in about how this bad thing might happen. Yeah, I've been telling myself that story for a long time. No longer contributing to that story, right? You're just becoming aware. What's up? What's up, Gabe? How you doing, dude? It's been a minute since I've seen you. Hope you're doing well, man. That's interesting. I thought once I was scared, terrified, that was already me adding second fear. I figured acceptance of fear would mean not being scared of it. No, so trying to force being brave is being as scared as you can be, right? So we're not trying to force anything. We're not trying to force any sort of feeling away. First fear is the feelings and the thoughts. You can't control that. They're going to make you feel scared. You're going to be scared. First fear is the fear, right? Second fear doesn't mean, okay, I've cut out second fear, so now I shouldn't feel first fear ever again. Man, that would be just asking the impossible of yourself, right? So you're going to be scared. You're going to have thoughts, but you're not adding to them. First fear means that you're going to be scared and you're going to have thoughts. There's nothing you can do about first fear. Not until the body and mind starts to heal anyway, right? So, first fear, you can't do shit about it. You're going to be scared, you're going to have thoughts. But this journey is not about not being scared, it's about not adding to the first fear, right? With the stories, with contributing to all the stories. The thoughts come, okay, you don't contribute. You don't sit down and write a story about it. The feelings come, you don't contribute. You don't sit down and write a big story about it. So I'm aware that I'm having these thoughts, right? I'm aware that I'm having these thoughts. These thoughts come. Okay, there's that old story again, right? These feelings come, and then it's almost automatic. I want to start adding all these stories, but okay, there's that temptation. There's all these stories. So basically, you have these first fear feelings and thoughts, but you're no longer getting involved in the stories about it. You're no longer contributing to it with all of the mental stories. And sometimes the mental stories can come in the form of negative intrusive thoughts, but you're just noticing it, right? You're becoming aware of all this. So I'm feeling particularly anxious, and here comes this thought, I don't want to feel this. Okay, there's that story that I've been writing for a long time, not going to contribute to that anymore. It's very tempting, not going to contribute to it. Or there's that thought about my heart exploding, right? Not going to contribute to that. Or maybe 15 minutes have went by and I've been sitting here writing a story the whole time. Okay, well there you go. I'm telling the same old story about how I don't want to feel this and this is horrible and yada yada yada. It's about dropping all the stories. And then sometimes the mind will offer you a story, right? And that can feel almost automatic, but that's okay. There's that story. Become aware of it. There's that story. Not going to contribute to that story, which basically just means not going to continue to add second fear, right? So you may be scared, you may be terrified. We call this first fear. You may have these suggestions come into your mind. We call this negative intrusive thoughts. But you're just aware of this and you're no longer contributing, right? You're just aware of all of this and you're no longer contributing. You're calling it out. Instead of being just blindly led into it, given right into the temptation and going down the rabbit hole, you're becoming aware of it, right? You're becoming aware of it. That way you don't get so deep into it adding all this second fear. That way you don't get so deep into the story adding all this second fear. You're just becoming aware. There's that story again, right? Maybe it just kind of popped up in my head. There's that story again. Okay? So you're becoming aware of it, but you're no longer contributing to it, right? Which means you're no longer adding second fear. If you feel an anxiety symptom, right, and that makes you feel afraid, You've got fear. That doesn't necessarily mean you're adding second fear. It only becomes second fear when you mentally get involved in the stories. So when you start getting mentally involved in the stories, your mind says, "Oh, I don't want to feel this. This is so horrible." Now, if you sit down and contribute to that, "Oh gosh, this is so horrible. I don't want to feel." If you carry on the stories with all this second fear, then you're contributing to second fear. But if you just become aware of the stories, "Oh, there we go. I just had the thought I don't want to feel this. This is horrible. Or there we go. I'm practicing that same old story of I don't want to feel this. This is horrible. You're becoming aware of it. Now you're starting to break out of the cycle. Now you're starting to break out of the cycle. See? Whereas before, you would have the symptoms and you'd feel afraid and you'd have the thoughts and you would just blindly go into it and contribute to all of the mental stories about how horrible it is. But now you're becoming aware of it. Now you're becoming aware of it. There's all that. There's those automatic second fear stories that I've been practicing, right? I'm not going to do that anymore. Or there's that negative intrusive thought story. I'm not going to contribute to that, right? See, either way it goes. You're just no longer, you're becoming more aware. You're no longer contributing to any sort of second fear story in your head, right? Now, again, that doesn't mean you won't feel afraid, right? That doesn't mean you won't feel afraid. Fear can be automatic, right? That doesn't mean you won't have thoughts from time to time, but you're no longer contributing, right? You're no longer contributing to the story. So, like Ray says, first fear is the initial thought or feeling, so you get the feeling, you get the thought, and then whether or not you contribute to that is up to you. Whether or not you take the pen and sit down, the mind offers you a pen, and contribute to that is up to you. So, just like Ray said there, the initial thought or feeling, okay, that comes along with having tired nerves is what we call first fear, and there's not much you can do about that. Okay, but whether you sit down and write a story about it that's rooted in second fear is up to you. Whether you sit down and join in on the mind that sent you that thought and write a story about it, contribute to the story, is up to you, right? Right? So it's about dropping all these stories. Dropping all these stories. It's very tempting to get involved in the story. There's that thought. My mind's offering me a pen. Do I sit down and contribute to it, or do I just say to myself, "Hey, there's that story," right? You just say, "Hey, there's that story. There's that thought. It wants me to sit down and contribute to it, but I'm not going to. I'm just aware of it. I'm not going to add second fear to it," right? Being afraid ain't that add second. No, you're going to be afraid. First fear. It's what we call first fear. You're fearful. Fear is an emotion that you can't control, especially when your nerves are tired. But whether or not you sit down and start adding second fear to that is up to you. So, for example, if my body's in a scared state and I sit down and I start contributing to the story about how horrible it is that I don't want to feel this, congrats, you're adding second fear. I mean that sarcastically. That's not congrats at all. But let's say you're feeling afraid and you don't sit down and write a story about it, right? You're feeling afraid, you've got all these thoughts coming and going, but you're just aware. There's all those stories I'm not going to contribute to, right? There's that feeling of fear, but I'm not going to sit down and write a horror story about it. Okay, there's that thought that wants me to write a horror story about it, but I'm not going to contribute to that horror story, right? So whether it's a thought that comes in, whether it's a feeling that comes in, we don't contribute to the story. We just become aware that it's there, but we're not contributing, right? We're not contributing. So a thought comes in, okay, there's that story. I'm not contributing, right? Just going to let it be. There's that feeling that comes in, okay, I'm not going to sit down and write a story about that either, right? I'm not contributing to the stories anymore. Yep, nothing added to it. That's a good way to put it, Max. Nothing added to it. You're not adding anything to these feelings. You're not adding anything to these thoughts, right? You're not contributing anymore. You're not contributing. You're just becoming aware and not contributing. You see what I'm saying? You're just becoming aware and no longer contributing. Okay, I'm aware that I'm feeling symptoms of fear. Okay, I'm aware that I'm having this thought. But that's where the period comes into play. You're no longer contributing. Because when you start contributing with all the mental blah, 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 you're just working yourself up and adding second fear. right? Right? So that's a good way to put it, Max. You're no longer adding to it. You're no longer adding to it. You're no longer adding to it. So, but when I feel fear slash scared of the first symptoms. So you're feeling fear, but are you contributing? Second fear is when you get up in your head and you tell all these stories, right? You contribute to all these stories. But if you're just feeling afraid, but you're not adding to anything with all of these stories, then you're good, right? So to feel afraid is to feel afraid. But are you adding to it? Are you getting up in your head and adding to it? Are you telling horror stories about it? Right? Are you telling horror stories about it? Yes or no? Do you tell horror stories and contribute to the horror stories about the way that you feel? If the answer is yes, you're adding second fear. If the answer is no, if you can say, "Oh, well, I'm feeling afraid, but I'm not contributing to any stories about it. I'm not telling myself all these horror stories about it." Then congrats. You're not adding second fear. You're just experiencing what's called first fear, right? It's adding to it. See what I'm saying? It's adding to it. Anxiety makes you feel afraid. That's what it does. Anxiety makes you feel afraid. That's what it does. Okay? But if you get up in your head and add stories about how awful it is and you don't want to feel it and it's horrible and I hate it so much, then you're adding to it. Then you're adding to it. That part's in your control. But feeling afraid is just what anxiety does. Whether or not you're adding to it is whether or not you get up in your head and you start telling all these stories. You see what we're saying? So feeling afraid is not a problem. It shouldn't be made into a problem. It's made into a problem when we get into our heads and we contribute to all these stories. That's when it becomes a problem. But feeling afraid in itself is not a problem. It's only a problem when we get in our heads and we start contributing to all the stories about it. Same with negative intrusive thoughts. Negative intrusive thoughts in themselves are not a problem until we get in our head and start contributing to the story instead of just saying, "Oh, there's that story," right? So the thoughts aren't the problem. Being afraid isn't the problem. That's what anxiety does. Anxiety makes you afraid. That's its job, right? The thoughts aren't the problem. None of this is a problem until you get up in your head and start fighting with it. Until you get up in your head and start contributing to it. Until you get up in your head and start arguing with it. Instead of being aware, you just need to be aware. That's what you need to be doing. So these thoughts, not a problem. These feelings, being afraid, not a problem. It's when you get up in your head and you start fighting with it all. That's when you're adding gas to the fire, right? To be afraid is to be afraid, and that's perfectly fine, right? To be afraid is to be afraid, and that's perfectly fine. It only becomes a problem when you start adding what we call second fear, which is to get up in your head and start contributing to the stories about how bad it is and how you don't want to feel it and it's horrible and you wish it'd go away, blah blah blah. You see what I'm saying? So, in your example, Sam, you say, "So I feel like this. I feel derealization." Okay, I feel scared because I'm feeling derealization, right? So you're feeling fear. You're also feeling derealization, right? But what's gonna make or break is whether or not you get up in your head with the story. "Oh, I don't want to feel this. This is horrible. Please make this go away. This is awful. I want this to stop. This is horrible. This is so bad. What if something bad You start contributing to all the mental stories about the way that you feel, and that's when it becomes a problem, right? That's when it becomes a problem. So I feel derealization. I feel fear. None of this in itself is a problem. It's just the way that I feel, right? But it becomes a problem when I get up in my head and start telling horror stories about the way that I feel. When I start contributing to the horror stories about the way that I feel or what might happen or blah, blah, blah. Right? So let's say I'm feeling scared and I feel derealization, and then kind of automatically out of habit up in my head there's this story about how I don't want to feel this. This is horrible. This is awful. Okay, I've become aware of that. All right, there's that story about how this is so bad and I don't want to live with this and blah blah blah. There's that story. I'm not going to contribute to that story anymore. Right? It just is what it is. I'm not going to contribute to that story anymore. The story might try to tempt you. It might try to pull you in. You've been practicing, contributing to these stories for so long that it might be very tempting. But you're just going to stay as the accepting awareness. There's that story, not contributing, right? So, feeling a feeling, not a problem. Having a thought, not a problem. Only becomes a problem when you start getting involved in all those mental stories, right? And if you notice you're doing that, just become aware of the story. There's that old story again about how, oh, something bad might happen and this is horrible and blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to contribute to that story anymore. I'm sick of contributing to that story, right? So it's basically about just shutting up, really. It's about feeling what you feel and having the thought you have, but having nothing to say to it, not adding to it, right? That's what it really comes down to. It's about shutting up. It's about no longer adding to it. Just being aware. Oh, there's that feeling. There's that thought. I'm not contributing to any of those old stories anymore, right? It's basically about just shutting up. So you're having all these thoughts and you're having all these feelings, but you're not adding to them. You're just shutting up. You're no longer getting involved, right? You're not adding to the story anymore. What's up, Pooty? It's good to see you, dude. I can't believe WB is curing me. Everything's starting to become clear to me. I'm more aware to things around me. Not anymore giving my thoughts importance. Nice, nice, nice. Love it, dude. Love it. I'm gonna check out all. Hope you find all the answers you need to find peace. You will by following this change. Massive thanks to you as always, Wonder Bro. Appreciate it, Max. Thanks for stopping by, dude. Thanks for stopping by, dude. So let's say, for example, I'm sitting around and I start to feel very scared, right? That's anxiety. That's fear. That in itself's not a problem. It's only a problem when I start adding second fear, which means to get up in my head and start telling all these horror stories, all these, and that can seem automatic sometimes. You might be sitting there and you feel very scared, and then automatically your mind is kind of like, oh God, you got to make this go away. This is horrible, right? But you can take a step back and be like, there's that story. There's that second fear story. I'm no longer contributing to it, right? Because second fear can seem kind of automatic. This is what you've been practicing. You've been practicing scaring yourself for so long with these second fear stories that they can seem kind of automatic, right? They can seem kind of automatic, but you can become aware of it. There's that broken record story, that broken record second fear story. I'm not going to contribute to that today, right? I'm just going to let myself feel today. Not going to contribute to that broken record second fear story, right? Or there's that negative intrusive thought story. I'm not going to contribute to that either. I didn't necessarily choose that negative intrusive thought, but I'm not going to contribute to it. There it is, that old broken record second, intrusive negative thought. Or there's that old broken record second fear that I normally contribute to, but I'm not going to today. I'm just going to feel what I feel. So whether it be a negative intrusive thought, okay, I'm not going to contribute to that story. My mind wants me to contribute to it. I'm not going to. I accept it. Or maybe it's automatic. You've been practicing second fear for so long. Oh gosh, for the past 10 minutes I've been telling all these second fear stories. Not going to contribute to those anymore either, right? So I'm not contributing to these negative intrusive thoughts. I'm not contributing to these negative horror stories. I'm just becoming aware of it all, right? Like, I'm sitting here, I feel scared. Okay. I'm sitting here, I had a negative intrusive thought. Okay, I'm not going to contribute to that. I'm sitting here and automatically I've been adding second fear today. Okay, well, I'm aware of it now. I'm aware of it now. Okay, I'm aware of it, so I'm not gonna go continue down that path anymore. I'm not gonna continue to contribute to that second fear story that I've been contributing to for so long, right? So whether it's a feeling, whether it's a thought, a negative intrusive thought, or whether it's you just out of habit getting up in your head and telling all these stories, whatever it may be, you're becoming aware of it and you're not contributing anymore. There's that thought, not going to contribute. There's that feeling, not going to tell a horror story about it. There's, oh, I just caught myself doing that though for 10 minutes. Okay, well now I'm aware, so I'm going to stop doing that. I'm not going to contribute to that anymore, right? So I know it seems a bit confusing, but basically to put it as simple as possible, you're not adding to anything anymore. You're not adding to these thoughts. You're not adding horror stories to these feelings. You're shutting up, basically, is what it comes down to. You're shutting up. When you have these thoughts, you're not contributing. You're not telling horror stories about the feelings anymore. That's the simplest way to put it. You're shutting up. You're shutting up. When these thoughts are there, you have nothing to say. When these feelings are there, you have no story to tell, right? You're shutting up. It is what it is. Max, dude, Max, thank you so much for the $10 tip, my guy. Thank you. Thank you, Max. Will we hit 11 days? I don't know. We'll see. The second key is so important as it gives you a lot of confidence. I'm finding myself singing an AM to my anxiety. I love it to stay as long as it wants. And thank you for protecting me. Good attitude to have. Way better than telling a second fear story, right? Way better than contributing to the negative intrusive thoughts. Just thanking the thoughts for coming, thanking the feelings for coming, right? Instead of contributing. Thank you for feeling the thoughts. Thank you to the feelings, but no longer contributing, right? There's that thought. My heart's going to explode. Not going to contribute to that. That's just an old story. There's that feeling. I'm not going to write a horror story about that either. So, you're not contributing to the thoughts. You're not writing horror stories about the feelings, right? None of that. None of that. I know it's super easy to overcomplicate. I'm aware of that. I know it's super easy to overcomplicate, but you got to understand it. It's like this. You're having your feelings, whatever they may be. You're having your thoughts, whatever they may be, but you're just becoming aware and you're not contributing anymore. You're not adding to anymore. I like the way Max put that. You're not adding to anymore. So, you get these feelings and they spark some thoughts or whatever, but you're just aware of it all. There's that thought, there's that feeling. I'm not contributing, right? Well, fear in itself is a symptom, right, Sam? Anxiety makes you feel afraid. That's what it does. So you could kind of say in a roundabout way that fear in itself is a symptom, but you're not going to tell horror stories about the fear. Does that make sense? You could say in a roundabout way that anxiety it makes you feel afraid, right? But you're no longer telling horror stories about the feeling. You know what I mean? And automatically you might notice that you go to do this, but you can instead be like, "Oh, there's me doing that again. I'm not going to go that route." Right? Does that make sense? Or maybe you get a negative intrusive thought and you start arguing with it. "Oh, there's me adding to that story of the mind. I'm not going to do that anymore." So basically, it comes down to you feel afraid, but you're not telling yourself horror stories about it anymore. You have a thought, but you're not contributing to the thought anymore, right? It just basically comes down to, at the end of the day, you're not adding to anything anymore. You're letting the thoughts come without adding a horror story. You're letting the feelings come without adding a horror story. You know, you're not adding to anything anymore, right? So you see what we're saying there? You're not adding to anything anymore. Maybe you get a thought. Okay, well, you're not adding to. Maybe you get a feeling. Okay, well, you're not telling a horror story. You're basically just shutting up. I mean, that's the simplest way to put it. I mean, you get the thoughts, but you have nothing to contribute, right? You get the feelings, but you have nothing to contribute. That's what it is at the end of the day. You're just shutting up. That's the simplest way to put it. You have the feelings, but you're shutting up. You have the thoughts, but you're shutting up. There you go. That's the simplest way to put it. You're becoming aware of all that, and you're not adding to these mental stories anymore. You're not telling these mental stories anymore. Not telling it anymore. No more. That's what it comes down to. That's probably the simplest way to put it, honestly, at the end of the day. A lot of people don't like to be told shut up, but I need to take a breather, man. We've been ranting for how long? Whew. Okay. That'll take it out of you. That'll take it out of you. Oh. Oh. Stretch. Oh, anxiety isn't necessarily something that has to be passed down. Anxiety is something that can be had and then prolonged with the story creation, right? So anxiety is not necessarily something that only affects certain people that can only be passed down, like through a family or something. Anxiety is something that we add to and then create a bigger mess out of it by all of the stories we tell ourselves, by all of the entertainment of the negative intrusive thoughts, fighting with them, by all of the horror stories we tell ourselves about the feelings. So it's not necessarily something that has to be passed down, right? It's not necessarily something that only certain people feel. Everybody has the emotion of anxiety, and anybody can make a problem out of it, right? Just like everybody has thoughts, and anybody can make a problem out of those too. You see what I'm saying? Anxiety is a part of everybody. It's a normal human emotion, but whether or not you make a problem out of it, that's like a personal thing. That's like some people make a problem out of their thoughts and they fight and contribute to those. Some people make a problem out of their feelings, they fight and contribute to those. And then it becomes this problem, but everyone has the emotion or the experience of anxiety from time to time. It's just some people turn it into a problem. They start, fighting with the thoughts and telling horror stories about the feelings. So whether or not you turn it into a problem. Oh. Ooh, I need something to drink, chat. That was a pretty long non-stop rant this stream. Alright, there we go. Let's see if we can get some music rolling. Which one do we normally go with? It says no copyright, but we'll see if that's true or not. My source isn't working here. What's going on? Why isn't that working? No? Okay, let's just try to make a new one. Uh, Still not working. Weird. Weird. Never had a problem with this before. Okay, I don't know. We'll have to figure that out here in a bit. Have to figure that out in a bit, I guess. Not sure what's up with that. Oh. Oh. Yeah, I think the only issue there, Sam, was that maybe when you felt the feelings of anxiety, when you felt the feelings of fear, you got into your head telling a story about how, oh, you shouldn't feel this way. You know what I mean? So you kind of like, you felt the experience of fear, you felt the experience of anxiety, and then started the story. We've been loving that word recently. Started the story about how you shouldn't be feeling this way, right? So you kind of see how it all comes back to a story that you're kind of telling yourself about how you feel and how you shouldn't feel it, and blah blah blah, instead of just being with the experience without all of the unnecessary storytelling. You see what we're saying? So I think that's what it was, in my opinion. I think you felt the experience of fear, you felt the experience of anxiety. Maybe you had some negative intrusive thoughts, but you jumped up in your head and was kind of like, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this. This is not how I should be feeling. I'm doing something wrong. And see, that's just a second fear story in itself, right? So that's why we said the simplest way to put it is just shutting up. It's not adding to anything. So you have the thoughts, you're not adding to them. You have the feelings, you're not adding to them, right? So you see, that's why we put that in that way, to try to make it even easier for you to understand. So I think when you experienced the anxiety, you jumped up in your head and started adding to it with all these stories about how you shouldn't feel this, and blah blah blah. You see where we're going here? So in itself, you were telling, these second fear stories, and you didn't even, really realize it, which happens. It happens. I promise I'm going to read all the comments, guys. I'm just trying to get situated over here. I'm a little behind on comments. I think we missed a few from earlier. What's up, Gina? Welcome, welcome. Is there anything you notice most people who make anxiety an unnecessary problem have in common? Big overthinkers, right? That's what I would say if I had to pick just one. One thing that people that make anxiety into a problem have in common, I would say being big overthinkers, big storytellers. Big storytellers. But we're trying to catch those stories and put an end to them, right? That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to feel our feelings and have our thoughts and not add to any of it. Yeah, exactly, Sam. It can seem almost automatic. We tell ourselves stories about our feelings. We tell ourselves, we contribute to the thoughts. Basically, adding to. We add to the feelings. We add to the thoughts. It can seem like an automatic habit because it is such a strong habit. But at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's a habit. So it's like I have a feeling, but I'm not adding any sort of mental story to that. I have a thought, but I'm not contributing to that. Basically, like Max said in the chat earlier, not adding to anything. Not adding to anything, just being aware of it, but not adding to it. Once you start adding to it, things get complicated, they get confusing. It's usually all rooted in the second fear. I have my thoughts and I have my feelings, but I'm not adding to anything. Hey, thanks, John. I appreciate that, dude. It's been a long time coming. Sounds so simple, doesn't it? No longer adding to anything. Alright, guys, I'll be right back just a second. Alright, we're back. Sorry about that, guys. We are back. Oh, yes, I have a constant running commentary in my head, even about the most mundane things. So, working to stop adding to the story is going to take work. Yes. And that's most people. Most people do have that constant running in their heads about, even like you said, mundane things. which, you know, using your mind in itself is not a problem. Being a daydreamer is not a problem. It only becomes a problem when that commentary is a constant fight with your feelings and a constant fight with your thoughts. That's when you start to fuel things up that don't need to be fueled up. So just becoming, you know, just becoming more aware of the story is the first step, and then not adding to it, practicing not adding to it. So you got the feelings, you're practicing not adding to, you know, creating any story around them. And then if you catch yourself doing that, you know, you're pulling yourself back in. Or you have thoughts, right? And you're not adding to those either. So it's basically about not adding to anything. You're not adding to the feelings, you're not adding to the thoughts. And if you are, that's what we need to work on. If you can catch that, you can be like, "Oh, there I go again. I'm adding to that thought." Or, "Oh, there I go again. I'm adding to that feeling," right? That's a good way to put it. Next stream that we tackle something like this, we'll probably talk about that. We'll probably put it in that way. I love finding new ways to put things, so that's how we'll probably put it to people next stream. Not to add to their thoughts, not to add to their feelings. I like that. I'm glad Max made that comment. We've talked about that before, but we might touch on that again. It's just a new way to put things. Stop adding to your thoughts and feelings. That's a good stream title, right? Who agrees? Stop adding dialogue. There we go. Stop adding dialogue to your thoughts. Stop adding dialogue to your feelings. It's an even better way to put it. It's really all second fear is at the end of the day. It's the constant adding of the dialogue to the thoughts and feelings. Puts you in a hamster wheel, man. That's fine, Truth. Like we just said, you know, not adding dialogue to the thoughts, not adding dialogue to the feelings. And you're not perfect. You know, you're human at the end of the day. You're gonna have days where you do add a bunch of unnecessary second fear dialogue to the thoughts and feelings. You do fight with the thoughts and feelings, right? Which basically just means, like I said, adding dialogue to the thoughts and feelings instead of acceptance. So, you know, you're gonna have those moments. You're gonna have those days. I mean, you're fairly new to this too, so you're not perfect. You're not perfect. It's hard to remain neutral sometimes, isn't it? I mean, that's basically what this comes down to, remaining neutral. Not trying to fight anything, not trying to do anything about it with these thoughts and feelings. Stop adding to it. Remaining neutral. That's a very simple way to put it, but that's not always, you know, sometimes old habits die hard. Yeah, well, see, now you know, Mickey. Now you know that that was just adding to the thoughts and feelings and putting you in a hamster wheel. Now you know. So it can be difficult sometimes to remain neutral and to not add dialogue to the thoughts and feelings. That can be difficult sometimes, but it's a practice. It's a practice. How are you doing? I'm doing good, Foo man. How you doing? like that. I like putting it that way. Remaining neutral. There we go. We're getting all sorts of stream ideas today. I actually do have a notepad on my computer where I write down stream ideas. There's just so many different ways, man. There's so many different ways that you can word this acceptance thing. I'm trying to, like, my goal here is by the time I'm done with this thing, whenever that day comes, I'm trying to make sure I've got a stream that tackles every different way you could possibly word this to try to speak to everybody out there. So many different ways you can word it. Remember, it basically comes down to not adding to anything. That I don't want to feel in front of others. So you got the thoughts. We're no longer going to add to the what if thoughts. You got the thoughts that come in. You're no longer going to add to the what if thoughts. Oh, we just disconnected there for a second, guys. Don't know what happened there. Hello? Is everyone here still? Mickey! Mickey, thank you so much for the $10 tip, Mickey. I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you, Mickey. We disconnected there for a second. I don't know what's going on. Can everybody still hear me? Alright, we're still good. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. I don't know what happened there, but we're still good, I believe. Thank you so much, Mickey, for the $10 tip. Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm sipping on a Mountain Dew. We got to get that caffeine going. Get me woke up. So that would be my advice to you, Fu. When you get these thoughts or you notice that you're telling a story about, how awful it's going to go at this birthday or whatever, just bring yourself back and remember, okay, I'm not going to add to that thought. I just had a thought about how horrible this birthday weekend's going to go. I'm not going to add to it, right? And then you get a feeling, okay, there's some fear there associated with that. I'm not going to add to that either. I'm not going to, which means I'm not going to, tell horror stories about it. I love Gina's emojis. They're so good. And you can even downright remind yourself of that if need be. Okay, I'm feeling this feeling. I'm not going to add to it, which means I'm not going to, add a bunch of dialogue to it. All right, I just had that thought. I'm not going to add a bunch of dialogue to that either. You can downright outright remind yourself of that if need be. Nothing wrong with some reminders. It sure as shit beats the alternative, which is adding to it. And that might not always be a comfortable process, right? That might not always be a comfortable process, I understand. Because even though you've stopped adding to it or you've reminded yourself to stop adding to it, those thoughts can still come, those feelings can still come. So I understand that it's not like a comfortable process, it's not a fun process, but what's the alternative? The alternative is just continuing to gas it all up. What good does that do? So, you'll heal in time, and I understand that it's not, again, I understand it's not a comfortable process, but it sure beats staying in the cycle. You're capable of it, Fu. Anybody is capable of it, dude. It just takes practice. Remaining neutral and no longer adding to these thoughts and feelings is not something that comes natural to most people. It's not something that comes natural because, I mean, you're such a bad habit of doing the opposite. So it's not something that comes natural. It's something that you're practicing. It's like any skill, really. So I understand that it doesn't come natural. I understand that it's something you've got to practice, and I understand that you might make some mistakes, right? This is all just kind of a part of the journey. I understand all of that. Let's see here. What did I do with that? There it is. There it is, chat. Oh yeah, you got to get the trusted member roles or role, Mickey. So just write a comment in there and I'll try to get that to you. Yeah, it's a common mistake that happens, Ann. It's a common mistake that happens. And that's why I say, I understand that the thoughts and feelings might still be there, but you're no longer adding to, and then it takes time for that fire to kind of burn out. And that's exactly why we did that stream about the fire analogy. Oh, absolutely, Fu. I understand that you might not have the most confidence in the world right now. I understand that completely. Well, worrying will always make you stressed out, Kevin. It's best to. That's why I say this is good life advice, not just good anxiety advice. If you notice yourself up in your head worrying about this and worrying about that, and there's no action that you can take, you can say, okay, I'm not going to add to that anymore and kind of let that burn out. Yeah, do the same. Use it straight up like a pill. Very, very common. Even after hearing of that pitfall over and over again, it's so easy and feels. Yeah, so I mean, what happens is people are like, okay, I'm not adding to that thought. Okay, I'm not adding to that feeling. And then because it doesn't instantly go away, they start adding to it again, right? Very, very common. Very, very common. It's like okay, I made that choice. I'm not adding to that thought, but then the thought doesn't immediately go away. Or okay, I've got this feeling, but I'm not adding anything to it, which means I'm not, telling any horror stories about it. But then that feeling doesn't immediately go away, and then it's right back to adding to the dialogue, right back to adding to the thoughts and feelings. So very, very common, common pitfall. It's happened to It's happened to myself back when I was, doing my best to get the hang of acceptance. It's happened to many, many people here. It's happened to more people than I can count. It's probably one of the most common pitfalls during recovery. Okay, I'm not adding dialogue to that thought. Oh, but the thought didn't stop. Okay, then I go right back to adding to it, right? Or okay, I've got that feeling. I'm making the choice to not add to it with any dialogue. Oh, it didn't go away. I'm going right back to adding to it, right? Very common, very very common. It's not exactly it's not exactly comfortable to sit in what we call the fire without adding to it, but it's necessary. And that's why we love that fire analogy so much, because it kind of put it into people's minds. It kind of gave them a new perspective. Hey, sometimes that fire don't burn out immediately. That doesn't mean you go back to adding to it, right? Yeah. The why me. There's so many different stories. There's so many different stories that people tell themselves. But at the end of the day, it comes down to stop adding to these thoughts and stop adding to these feelings, right? And if you notice that you kind of do that out of habit, pull yourself back. Because it is a habit. At the end of the day, it is a habit. There I go again, adding to that thought. There I go again, adding to that feeling. It is a habit, and you got to be self-aware and you got to catch it. So regardless of what your pitfall is, or regardless of anything, the advice doesn't change, and that's kind of the beautiful thing about the advice because there's a million different pitfalls, or there's a million different things that people tell themselves or add to their thoughts or add to their feelings. There's a million different ways that you can go, but at the end of the day, the advice doesn't change. To cut it out, to stop adding to these thoughts and stop adding to these feelings. So that's the good news. The advice does not change regardless of, whatever it is. That is the good news. I told my therapist about the fire analogy and she absolutely loved it. She is using it now too. That's awesome. Got therapists out there using my advice. I love it. Unfortunately, Kevin, I absolutely cannot tell you whether or not you should take medication. That is not up to me. That's something you're going to have to speak to a doctor about. All I can do is tell you what I know about acceptance. Stop adding to these thoughts and feelings. Basically, shut up. Basically, get quiet, right? So these feelings come, you're not adding some dialogue to them. These thoughts come, you're not adding to them. Basically, shut up and feel it. That's what acceptance comes down to at the end of the day. And I know that's easier said than done. It takes some practice. But as far as medication and stuff like that goes, I can't. That's not up to me. That's going to be left up to you and a doctor. So that's the one thing for those of you who are kind of new here on the channel. That's the one thing I cannot and will not touch on. And you shouldn't taking medication advice from anyone in the chat either. I will say this though, you can use the advice whether you're taking it or not taking it. Yeah, it gets a bit sticky when we talk about medication because, we don't want to tell someone, "Oh, you should take this or you shouldn't take that," and then, good things doesn't happen. Now it's your fault. So, you got to let people kind of make their own choice when it comes to medication, but I will say this, you can practice the advice whether you're on it or not on it. I will say that much. You put the comment on Discord? Okay, let me go check that out, Mickey. Let's see if I can find that. Okay, yeah, let me give you that trusted member role, Mickey. Now you should be able to share stuff. Yeah, that's the one thing we can say. We can say that you can use the advice regardless. That's the one thing we can say there. Yeah, I just have it set up that way, Mickey, to cut down on any sort of trolls or anything like that. We don't even have trolls over on the Discord, but just to be safe, I just do it to where you have to have the trusted member role before you can like post in the media channels and stuff. Like anybody can view them, but in order to like post media, you have to have that role. I just do that as like a safety precaution. Since the Discord link is pretty much public. That way, if anybody ever gets any funny ideas, they'll be stopped in their tracks. Gotta keep my Discord peeps safe. Yeah, no problem. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. How not to add second fear? You gotta catch yourself. So when you're up in your head, adding all these stories to these feelings, you gotta cut it out. It's a matter of becoming self-aware, catching it, and cutting it out. Rinse and repeat. There I go again. There I go again, up in my head, adding all these horror stories to these feelings. No more. So it's a matter of catching yourself when you're in the habit of adding, dialogue to these thoughts and feelings, catching yourself when you're doing it, and cutting it out. Making that choice. Oh yeah, the good old floating analogy. Basically she was politely saying you have to shut up. Right? That's basically what she was politely saying. No problem, Kevin. Take it easy, dude. Thanks for watching. Super chill stream today, guys. Oh, I love it. Man, personally, I've been like extra tired here recently. I don't know. I think it's just life finally catching up to me. I've had a lot going on here recently, as you guys know. So I think it's life just catching up to me, and I'm finally just like slowing down a bit. We recently broke 10K. That was huge. We've had a lot going on in my personal life, so I think everything's just kind of like caught up, and now I'm just exhausted. It's about almost 8 o'clock for me, Mickey. My day was good. My day was good. Starting to get a bit hungry now. Sometimes I like these end of the streams where we're just hanging out and chilling. Sometimes I'm just like super, super, I don't know, super relaxed and chilled. It might not be very entertaining for you guys when I'm not on one of my famous Wonder Bro rants, but sometimes I just like to chill out with everybody. Just kind of be more casual. It's good to relax every now and then. Might be kind of boring for you guys to watch, but I hope not. 1:37 a.m. here. You're up late, man. Have to sleep now. Thanks for the stream as always. Good night, dude. Take it easy. Thanks for watching. Spaghetti and meatballs. Invite me over. That sounds great. See, that's the kind of adding to that we got to cut out. Truth. No more saying things like, "Oh, I'd give my arm to be free of this anxiety," blah blah. All this second fear. So when you notice that you're adding to these thoughts and feelings like that, we take a step back. There I go again. I'm just going to be neutral instead. I'm just going to practice being neutral instead. Doesn't matter if you've had the bad habit for 50 years, 100 years, 3 million years. You can break the habit just as quick as anybody. Whether I give a 12-year-old a bicycle and tell him, okay, I'm going to teach you how to learn how to ride this bike, or I give a 90-year-old a bicycle. I mean, obviously there might be some physical attributes that might make it a bit more difficult, but not in this circumstance. I think you get what I'm getting at here, though. Uh, you know, we can learn how to ride a bike at any age. Maybe not the best analogy to use, considering it might be a bit harder to get a 90-year-old to up on a bike, but I think you get what I'm saying here. This is more of a mental practice than anything, so kicking the habit, yes. Hey, what's up, Edgar? How you doing, dude? Still have this heat wave in the UK. It's uncomfortable to sleep, man. I would say so. I would say so. How hot is it there right now? Well, I guess you do Celsius, right? So I probably wouldn't have any idea. Yeah, I think so, Edgar. I'm just exhausted, man. I think everything is just finally caught up to me, and now I'm just needing a little bit of a recharge. Part of being human. Ugh, having a bit of a, I guess you could call it a lazy day. I'm still trying to get things done over here, but I'm going at it at a very slow pace today. Still trying to get everything done that I need to get done, but just going at it at a very slow pace today. Storms coming in on Saturday. I like a good storm. Thunderstorms and rain, some of my favorite weather. I think it's really relaxing. I used to put on those like rain videos and storm videos like for sleep, but I don't really do that anymore. I don't know. It's not the same. It's not the same. Oh yeah, I believe it, Carrie. I believe it. I believe. Maybe that's a bad habit that I need to break. Feeling like I need to get things done all the time. I don't know. I think it's just who I am. I like to try to stay productive, but at the same time, there's a time and place for it. You gotta rest from time to time. So I don't know. Maybe it's a bad habit I need to work on. Hey, thanks again for that 10K subs, guys. Every time I look down and see that thank you 10K gif I got on screen there, it reminds me. It's still kind of unreal to me that we broke 10K. Couldn't have done it without you guys. Let's see. Let's check my weather. Are we supposed to have any storms here soon? Small chance on Monday and Tuesday. A 40% chance. I'm one of those people that I honestly wouldn't mind if it rained and stormed year round. Like, I really wouldn't. I love it. Life can throw us off course and we tend to get so busy we forget about ourselves. You're doing great. Yeah, you're right. Sometimes we get curveballs and we get so wrapped up in being busy we forget to take some days to ourselves, but rest is a fundamental part of being alive. You're going to be productive, you've got to make time to rest. I agree with you 110%. Got to make time for yourself to rest and not feel guilty about it. It'll get done. It'll get done eventually. I don't know, Edgar. That would be cool. I hate airplanes, but need to get over that, right? Who was it that I was talking to the other day about that? I don't know. I had somebody in the chat talking about how they thought I was fearless or something, and I was like, no, dude. Just because I'm not sensitized and I practice acceptance with my feelings and thoughts doesn't mean I become some fearless superhero. And then I went on to tell him about how I hated airplanes and I hated spiders. Just to name a few things that I'm not fond of. I don't know if it's the airplane or the heights. I should be dead right now, according to WebMD. I think we should all be dead right now, according to WebMD. Yeah, claustrophobia, maybe that plays a part of it, Carrie. Did you hear about that plane that crashed because the pilot let his 15-year-old drive the plane? What? For real? I think in the 90s? I never heard about that. That's insane. What was he thinking? What? Genius. We've got a genius on our hands, folks. There you go. I think Mickey put it best there. Fucking moron. That's one way to put it. I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, he kind of made the choice to put everybody's life at risk. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, Ryder. When you have to ask people what were you thinking, it's obvious that they weren't. There you go. Good way to put it. That's crazy, Mickey. Yeah, that's crazy. I've never heard that story. I have not, Carrie. Is there a difference? Safer, apparently. I do, and it's a good change in pace. Can make you ill. Okay. All right, guys. Oh, oh. I'm gonna wind this stream down in just a minute. We've been going on for a while, haven't we? What do I want to eat today, guys? I was like, oh yeah, shut up. It's okay. There you go. There you go. So you could sense those old stories coming up. You could sense yourself falling into the habit of adding to those thoughts and feelings, was able to shut it down. Oh, all right, ladies and gentlemen, ugh, we we are gonna officially shut it down here. I think we've been going for what, 2 hours now? I believe. How long has the stream been going on? Feels like it's been a while, man. All right, let's get back over to the setup. All right, lovely people. We are going to end it here. We have been going, wow, almost over 2 hours. The stream got interrupted earlier and then had to reconnect, so the timer's a little bit off, but I believe we've been going for at least over 2 hours. So we're going to go ahead and end it here, guys. I love you so much. Thank you for everything. You guys are amazing. Never forget it. Thank you again for the 10K, and thank you again for all of the support that you have continued to show me over the years. I love you guys, and I'm sure I will see you very, very soon. Until next time, as always.